He was invisible to most people, just the quiet janitor who emptied trash cans and swept the marble floors of a billionaire's mansion. But one evening, in a room filled with glittering guests and a grand piano gleaming under the lights, everything changed. A careless challenge, a cruel laugh, and a moment that would test not just his talent, but his dignity. No one knew the truth about the man in the corner, but they were about to find out. And when they did, nothing in that room would ever feel the same again. Isaiah Carter had been a part of the Wexler estate staff for nearly 5 years. His day started long before the sun rose, when the world was still quiet and most people were asleep. He would arrive early, polishing the vast marble floors until they shone with a mirror-like finish, and carefully dusting the grand chandeliers that hung higher than the ceilings in most homes in his neighborhood. Isaiah was good at what he did, quiet, efficient, and invisible enough that most of the estate's wealthy guests never bothered to learn his name. To them, he was just another face among the countless staff who kept the mansion running smoothly. But Isaiah was more than just a janitor. Music was his true passion, something he kept hidden from everyone. After long shifts, he would retreat to his modest apartment, where an old, battered keyboard sat in the corner. It wasn't much, but it was his world. He practiced tirelessly, fingers moving over the worn keys with the kind of skill and emotion that made the music come alive. Yet at the mansion, that part of him was locked away. Tucked behind the silence and the sweeping brooms, the Wexlers were a family built on old money and old traditions. Their lavish parties were famous in the city nights, filled with sparkling gowns, sharp tuxedos, and carefully curated art collections worth millions. In the center of their grand music room stood a magnificent piano, so pristine and polished that it looked more like a priceless artifact than a playable instrument. Isaiah had walked past that piano hundreds of times, every time feeling the familiar itch in his hands, aching to touch the keys. But he knew his place. People like him, janitors, staff, weren't meant to play the Wexler's piano. That evening, the mansion buzzed with the energy of a high-profile charity gala. A string quartet played softly in the background while the guests mingled over champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Isaiah moved silently from room to room, expertly collecting empty glasses and plates, blending into the background like a shadow. He was used to being unseen, unnoticed, but everything was about to change. In the next few minutes, an unexpected challenge, a careless insult, and a cruel laugh would pull Isaiah from the shadows and thrust him into the spotlight. What happened next would not only reveal the truth about his talent, but also expose the deep prejudices hiding behind the glittering facade of wealth and power. The grand hall of the Wexler estate glittered under crystal chandeliers as laughter and music filled the air. Guests swirled in elegant dresses and polished shoes, their conversations light and carefree. Isaiah moved quietly among them, a ghost in the lavish world that wasn't his own. He cleared glasses, wiped tables, and swept crumbs with practiced ease, unseen and unheard. But then, near the music room, a careless voice broke the rhythm of the night. "Hey, janitor." The words cut sharply through the hum of polite chatter. Isaiah stiffened. The speaker was Richard Wexler Jr., the heir to the family fortune, leaning against the doorframe with a sneer. His eyes glittered with amusement, the kind that comes from knowing you hold all the power. Isaiah paused, glancing up. The room seemed to shrink, the weight of every eye suddenly pressing down on him. Richard's gaze landed on the gleaming grand piano dominating the space. "Bet you wouldn't know a note if it hit you," he said, voice dripping with mockery. "But here's a deal. Play something on that piano, and maybe I'll marry you." A nervous laugh bubbled from a nearby guest. Isaiah's heart pounded. The challenge was ridiculous, humiliating, and impossible to ignore. But beneath the laughter, something stirred, a quiet defiance that had been simmering inside him for years. He stepped forward, fingers trembling, and sat at the piano bench. The room fell silent as he placed his hands on the keys. At first, the note stumbled, uncertain, soft. Then, as if summoned by years of hidden passion, his fingers found their rhythm. The music swelled, rich and powerful, filling every corner of the room. Whispers rippled through the crowd. The polished sonata Isaiah played was unlike anything anyone expected. His hands moved with a genius that transcended his job title. But the disbelief in the room soon twisted into something darker. Richard's smirk faded, replaced by a sneer. "Lucky guess," he spat. "Must be some kind of fluke. Probably memorized a few notes." The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some averted their eyes, while others leaned in, sensing the brewing storm. Isaiah's face flushed, but he didn't stop playing. Each note was a statement, an unspoken protest against the way he'd been dismissed and mocked. But then came the whispered comments behind his back. "Who does he think he is?" One guest muttered. "That's not a janitor's place." Another voice, sharp and cold, cut through the murmur. "People like him should know their place." Isaiah felt the weight of those words like a physical blow. The room, once filled with music and awe, now felt like a courtroom where he was the defendant. His hands faltered for a moment, but the music did not stop. As he finished, the silence lingered thick, tense, uncertain. Then Richard stepped forward, voice loud and biting. "That was surprising," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "But don't get too comfortable. This is still our world." Isaiah stood, the applause faint and hesitant. The crowd had witnessed a moment of brilliance, but beneath it all, the ugly truth was clear. Talent alone wasn't enough to break the invisible chains of prejudice. Later, in the quiet of the staff corridors, Isaiah's heart still raced not from the music, but from what had just happened. The laughter, the sneers, the veiled insults, they all echoed in his mind. Yet beneath the pain was a growing fire, a determination not just to prove himself, but to challenge the walls built by ignorance and hate. But the night was far from over. The guests had not forgotten. Rumors would spread. The Wexler family would not let this challenge go unanswered. And Isaiah knew that the real test wasn't the piano, it was what came next. Would he stand his ground, or be pushed back into the shadows where so many like him had disappeared before? The days after the gala blurred into a relentless storm for Isaiah Carter. What had started as a moment of unexpected triumph had quickly spiraled into something far darker. The whispers, once murmurs, grew into full-throated rumors. The Wexler family, powerful and proud, refused to let one janitor's talent disrupt their carefully controlled world. IT began with cold stares from the other staff, their eyes filled with suspicion and unease. Some avoided him completely, afraid to associate with the man who dared to cross invisible lines. The charity gala became a ghost haunting every conversation, every glance. But the real blow came when Richard Wexler Jr. called him into the study, a room lined with leather-bound books and heavy curtains that seemed to swallow the light. The air was thick with tension, and Isaiah knew this wasn't a request for more music lessons. Richard stood by the window, his silhouette sharp against the setting sun. "You think that piano moment means you belong here," he said, voice low and cutting. "But talent isn't enough. You don't have the pedigree, the background, or the respect." Isaiah's fists clenched at his sides, anger and humiliation twisting inside him like a storm. "I don't need your respect," he replied quietly. "I only want to be seen for what I can do." Richard laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "Seen? You're visible now. Yes, but only as a joke, a spectacle for their amusement. You'll never be more than what you are, a janitor playing at a world that will never accept you." The words dug deeper than any slap. Isaiah's heart pounded not with fear, but with a fierce determination that had been building inside him for years. He realized then that the battle was no longer about the piano keys or the fleeting applause. It was about breaking down the walls built by prejudice, ignorance, and pride. But before Isaiah could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. A family friend and influential board member entered, ice cold and calculating. "Richard's right," she said smoothly. "We can't have this distraction. The estate's reputation is at stake." The message was clear. Isaiah was unwelcome. His place was outside these walls, not challenging the world inside them. Later that night, as Isaiah packed his few belongings, the weight of it all threatened to crush him. Every harsh word, every dismissive glance, piled onto the truth he'd known too well sometimes. Talent and hard work weren't enough to escape the shadows cast by racism. But just as despair began to seep in, a thought sparked within him, a memory of every quiet moment spent at his battered keyboard, the music that refused to be silenced. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. Outside, the city lights twinkled like distant stars, unreachable yet real. Isaiah stood by the window, looking out but seeing beyond. This wasn't the end. It was a beginning. His fight was only just starting. Isaiah left the Wexler estate that night with a heavy heart, but a fire burning brighter than ever. The mansion's towering walls couldn't contain the truth he carried inside. That talent, passion, and dignity are not defined by the color of one's skin or the job title society assigns. In the days that followed, Isaiah's world changed in ways he never imagined. He lost his job at the estate, a blow that stung deeply but didn't break him. Friends and strangers reached out, some inspired by his courage, others moved by the injustice he faced. Slowly, a community began to form around his story, one that refused to accept the silence and invisibility imposed by systemic racism. Isaiah's piano playing became a symbol, not just of skill, but of resilience. Videos of that night's performance leaked online, sparking conversations far beyond the gilded halls of the Wexler mansion. People everywhere saw the undeniable truth: how society often overlooks talent and humanity simply because of race and class. But Isaiah's journey also exposed the harsh reality that many face daily. Talent and hard work, no matter how extraordinary, often collide with invisible barriers, walls built from prejudice, fear, and centuries of inequality. His story is a mirror reflecting the painful truth. Racial injustice is not confined to one place or one moment. It is woven into the very fabric of society. For Isaiah, the challenge was no longer about proving himself to the elite. It was about reclaiming his own worth and demanding recognition for all who have been overlooked, undervalued, and dismissed because of their race. His music became his voice, a powerful anthem against the forces that try to silence so many. This story is a reminder that racism doesn't just live in hateful words or violent acts, it hides in the subtle, everyday decisions that shape who gets to be seen, heard, and valued. It lives in the doubts cast on a janitor's talent, the barriers that keep people in the shadows, and the cruelty masked by polite smiles. Isaiah's experience challenges us all to ask, how many gifts have been lost because society refused to look beyond the surface? How many voices remain unheard because of who they are or where they come from? The question now isn't just about Isaiah, it's about every person who has ever been made to feel less than because of the color of their skin. It's about the systems we uphold and the change we must demand. If you've been moved by Isaiah's story, don't let it end here. Share this video. Talk about what you've seen and heard. Stand up when you witness injustice, even in small moments. Because real change begins with recognition, and recognition starts when we refuse to look away. Isaiah's story asked us, in a world full of talent and potential, how much longer will we let prejudice decide who gets to play the piano?